My second child never received love from, and when she grew up, she took revenge on her sister. I still remember the day I found out I was pregnant with my second child, standing in the tiny bathroom of our new home in a city that felt overwhelmingly unfamiliar. I was staring at the plastic stick that showed a faint but undeniable positive result, and my heart was doing cartwheels in my chest. I immediately thought of my firstborn, the one I lovingly call my soulmate of baby. My daughter was, and still is, everything I had ever wanted in a child. Kind, clever, curious. I could never get enough of her snuggles and laughter. The love I felt for her was so encompassing, so absolute, that I worried whether there was enough space in my heart to love another child with that same intensity. Despite my worry, I convinced myself that I would find that same kind of love the minute I saw my second baby. After all, my husband and I have what I've always considered an unbreakable bond. He cherished my firstborn from the moment he met her, taking on fatherhood duties without ever missing a beat, never making me feel guilty for bringing a child from a previous relationship into his life. In him, I saw the promise of happily ever after, a caring, giving man with a huge heart, the kind of man who would do anything to ensure our children's happiness. So I imagined our second baby would be yet another perfect puzzle piece in our family. But the pregnancy itself was arduous in ways I never expected. I felt nauseous nearly every waking hour. My back ached relentlessly. I had migraines that could leave me whimpering in a dark room for hours. By the second trimester, my emotions were swinging wildly. Some days I wept, without any obvious reason. Other days I was so angry, or so tired, that even mustering the energy to speak felt impossible. I had experienced mild morning sickness with my first daughter, but it was so manageable in comparison. This time felt like it was 3 times as hard. I was too exhausted to cook, to clean, to do anything but survive. Even the days I mustered enough strength to play with my older daughter were drained by the end, leaving me in tears after she'd go to bed. I told myself that all of this discomfort would be worth it once I was holding my newborn in my arms. I would rock that baby in our old wooden rocking chair, just as I had done with my first, and all the pain would be nothing but a distant memory. The reality that unfolded was quite different. The birth was complicated, longer, and more intense than I ever predicted. My labor seemed endless. The contractions started subtle, like a slow-rolling tide, and quickly built into a storm of pain. At some point, I forgot how to focus on my breathing, lost in a haze of surging aches that made me clench my fists into the hospital sheets. My husband stood by my side, whispering reassurances, but I was adrift in my own misery. When the baby finally arrived, I was too exhausted to feel that immediate rush of euphoria. Instead, I felt relief that the pain was over, followed quickly by an odd emptiness that made me want to sob. My second daughter was placed in my arms, wrapped in a light blanket, eyes squeezed shut as she let out one weak cry after another. I gazed down at her face, expecting to feel the same surge of unconditional adoration that washed over me the first time I held my older daughter. But it didn't come. I tried to ignore that nagging sense of disappointment. I wanted to blame it on my lack of sleep, the medications, the exhaustion. But as the days turned into weeks, I realized something was off. Deeply, painfully off. I felt as though I was going through the motions of caring for a baby, but my heart wasn't in it. And worse, this baby was not an easy baby. She cried endlessly. She screamed when she was hungry, when she needed a diaper change, when she was uncomfortable, and sometimes it seemed when she just wanted to voice her general displeasure with the world. Every attempt I made to cuddle her or sing to her was met with red-faced wails and rigid little arms that fought being held. I began to dread each cry. I couldn't stand to hear it because it felt like I was failing. In comparison, my older daughter had been the opposite as a newborn. She was calm, smiling, almost magical. Or maybe I just remembered her that way because I had fallen so fiercely in love with her from the start. But this new baby tested me in ways I never expected. One night, as she wailed in my arms, I found myself staring at the clock, counting the minutes until my husband would walk through the door. I felt an overpowering sense of shame for feeling this way. Mothers are expected to love their children boundlessly, equally, no matter what. But there I was, resenting my own child for simply existing as an infant, for crying as infants do, for not being as placid and gentle as my first had been. I kept all of this to myself. My husband looked so happy whenever he held our new, gazing down at her with these adoring eyes that made my chest tighten with guilt. He was the best father I could have asked, a dream come true. And I didn't want to crush his joy. If I told him how numb I felt toward this little one, would he think less of me? Would he be angry, or worse, disappointed? He had taken on my first child without a single complaint. He deserved to feel like everything was beautiful. So I stayed silent. I tried to mask my apathy and frustration with soft smiles and coos whenever he was around. I told him I was just tired. But on the inside, I felt like an intruder in my own home. My older daughter was oblivious to my struggle. She adored her baby sister in that wide-eyed, unreserved way that only children can. She constantly wanted to hold her, to give her little kisses, and show her the wonders of the house. She would sidle up to the bassinet and giggle, saying, "Hi, baby." I'm your big sister. Her delight only drove home my sense of failure. Why could a 3-year-old feel more genuine love and enthusiasm than I could manage? I worried that this dynamic might change, that if I couldn't learn to love my second baby properly, I would inadvertently ruin the bond between the sisters. But I still couldn't force the affection I believed should have blossomed naturally. Every day blurred into the next. I spent hours pacing the floor, trying to soothe my screaming infant. I could feel my nerves fraying like a rope with too much weight pulling at it. My body ached from a lack of proper sleep. When my husband's alarm clock rang in the morning, signaling that he was off to work another 12-hour day, a sense of dread settled into my chest. It meant I had another long stretch of time alone with the baby. My therapy appointments became my only hope for relief, but the sessions felt too short. I would find myself sobbing halfway through them, stammering about feeling disconnected from my baby, terrified that maybe there was something fundamentally broken. My therapist would offer gentle encouragement, reminding me about postpartum depression, telling me bonding can take time, telling me I wasn't a terrible mother. But I left each appointment feeling raw, yearning for a miracle solution that never seemed to come quickly enough. Adding to the mounting tension, we had no friends or family nearby. We had moved to this new city for my husband's job, and that was our priority at the time. It felt like an adventure until the baby arrived, and I realized how lonely I truly was. There was no one to call for a quick respite, no one to step in and say, "Get some rest," or "Go out for a coffee alone." The isolation coupled with the relentless cries made me question everything. Sometimes when my husband got home, I would hand the baby to him and run to the bathroom, shutting the door just so I could breathe without hearing those wrenching screams. My husband never complained about it. If anything, he seemed pleased to spend time with his daughter, rocking her softly, humming lullabies that somehow calmed her more than I ever could. That only fed my insecurity. What was wrong with me that I couldn't do what he did so effortlessly? I forced myself to follow all the rules of good mother. I made sure she was always fed, always in a clean diaper, always swaddled if she was cold. I read her stories in that gentle, lilting voice I used with my older daughter. I gave her an endless supply of kisses and quiet murmurs of encouragement. "You can do this, baby girl. You can grow big and strong. You are safe. You are loved." Except I still felt nothing in my heart. No spark, no unifying warmth. I felt like I was acting, even if my baby never knew. The guilt piled higher each day. I would look at my older daughter's photos on my phone, remembering the newborn glow I felt back then. The disbelief that something so precious could be mine. Why couldn't I bring that energy to my new baby? The self-loathing sometimes threatened to swallow me whole. The emotional strain was unrelenting. As a result, I started paying closer attention to the baby's behavior. The crying didn't seem normal, even by newborn standards. I noticed she would arch her back as if in pain, her little legs pulling up towards her belly. She spat up a lot more than my firstborn had, sometimes choking momentarily. The fussiness seemed to peak after feeding. I wondered if maybe there was an underlying medical issue, so I made an appointment with the pediatrician. My husband came with me. He held our daughter gently on his lap as we waited in the exam. When the doctor asked about her symptoms, my husband and I listed them out. Constant crying, excessive spit-up, extreme fussiness, general discomfort. She was about 8 weeks old by then. The pediatrician suggested we try dairy-free formula, suspecting a possible milk allergy or reflux issue. I admit I left that appointment with a small flicker of hope. As we purchased the specialized formula, Alimentum, I tried to drown out its hefty price tag in my head by focusing on the possibility of relief for both my baby and me. The formula did smell faintly of something like old potatoes or soggy cardboard, but I was willing to try anything. That first evening, my husband prepared the new formula. The baby fussed in her bouncy seat, her little face already scrunching up in irritation. When he brought the bottle to her lips, she took a few hesitant sips, then began sucking it down more eagerly. I watched, tense. My hopes soared too high, perhaps, because I didn't see an immediate improvement. She fussed that night, still cried, still seemed dissatisfied with the world. But the very next morning, I woke up feeling the typical exhaustion. But something was different in the nursery. There was no immediate scream. Instead, I heard a soft cooing noise. My heart pounded as I made my way to her bassinet. She was awake, lying there, her bright little eyes staring up at me. And then, I saw it. The most enormous, toothless, heart-melting smile. It was like a sunrise blooming across her tiny face. My breath caught in my throat. This was the first time she'd truly smiled at me. Not just a reflex, not just gas. This was a real smile. A recognition of me as her mother, or at least as someone who belonged to her. My reaction was a heady mix of relief, joy, and the most staggering guilt. Tears sprang to my eyes instantly. I reached down and scooped her up, cradling her gently against my chest. She was warm and soft in my arms, and for the first time, I felt her relax into me without screaming. I whispered to her, "Good morning, little one," and she burbled happily in response. That smile opened a door in my heart, a door I hadn't realized was rusted shut. From that day forward, the baby's demeanor shifted. She was still fussy at times, and I came to realize that might just be her personality. a little firecracker who isn't afraid to let the world know she's displeased. But she wasn't screaming uncontrollably around the clock anymore. My husband's face lit up when he saw how calm and alert she was becoming. He didn't question the dramatic change too deeply, but I knew it had a lot to do with the dietary switch. Her little stomach was no longer under constant assault by something her body couldn't handle, and just as she began showing more of her personality, I found new depths of motherly tenderness I hadn't tapped into before. It was like she had finally given me permission to love her. When she gazed up at me, her dark eyes filled with a kind of interest or curiosity, my heart softened. It wasn't as instant or as powerful as what I felt with my first daughter, but it was there, quiet, bud-like, waiting to bloom. Sometimes I stood over her bassinet, watching her blink and wiggle, and a tear would slip down my cheek. I silently begged her forgiveness for all the resentment I'd been harboring. It felt like the first real step toward a connection. Meanwhile, my husband worked on adjusting his schedule. Instead of those 12-hour days, he went down to a more manageable number of hours. He recognized that my mental health was frayed, that I needed him more than ever. I had confided in him a little, never fully admitting I didn't love the baby at first, but enough to let him know I was struggling deeply with sleep deprivation and postpartum blues. He didn't lecture me or judge me. He simply asked me what he could do. So he started taking night shifts a few times a week, letting me sleep for blocks of 4 or even 5 hours. That uninterrupted rest made a staggering difference in my mood and my ability to cope with the normal challenges of caring for an infant. Therapy also helped. My doctor had prescribed SSRIs for my postpartum depression, and although I was initially hesitant about going on medication, within a few weeks I noticed a leveling out of my emotions. The uncontrollable waves of despair receded to something more manageable, more like small ripples that I could navigate without spiraling. My therapist guided me through exercises to foster bonding, skin-to-skin contact, singing softly to the baby, writing down small joys in a journal. I started to notice little things about my daughter, the way her tiny fingers would curl around mine, the way she would kick her legs excitedly when she was placed on her playmate, the sweet smell of her hair after a bath. Bit by bit, my heart began to let her in. We started to create a new routine as a family of 4. My older daughter, still brimming with big sister pride, would crawl onto the couch next to me, gently resting her hand on the baby's leg while I fed her. We'd watch cartoons together, the baby in my arms, my older girl snuggled up to my side. It felt like we were slowly weaving a new tapestry of memory, each thread a little brighter, a little stronger than the day before. Sure, the baby would still let out screams of frustration if she was overtired or gassy, but I found that I could handle those moments better now. Instead of feeling exasperated, I was more inclined to whisper, "It's okay, sweetheart, mommy's here," and genuinely mean it. As the weeks passed, that bond I thought I might never have began to grow. It started small, just a flutter in my chest when she'd rest her cheek against, and it began to expand each time she locked eyes with me and gave another one of those gummy smiles. One day, I caught myself dancing around the living room, holding her close to me, while some silly song played in the background. Her soft coos were music to my ears. I hadn't felt that carefree in a long, long time. The realization that I was actually enjoying my baby, enjoying motherhood again, washed over me like a warm wave. Of course, life was not perfect. There were still rough nights where I felt like a zombie, pacing the bedroom with her at 3 a.m., praying for her to drift back to sleep. There were still moments when I felt pangs of shame, remembering how distant I'd felt in the beginning. Sometimes I worried that I had done some invisible harm, that she might sense the anxiety and disconnection I wrestled with during her first few weeks of life. My therapist, though, reassured me that babies are incredibly resilient and that consistent, loving care, even if it takes time for deep emotional bonding, still fosters a secure attachment. She told me that a mother's heart can sometimes take a little longer to truly open after a difficult birth, painful postpartum recovery, and exhaustion. She reminded me that postpartum depression isn't a moral failing, but a mental health condition that can be addressed and overcome. In those moments, my husband's unwavering support provided an extra layer of comfort. He'd see me staring into space, lost in a tangle of worry, and he'd gently place a hand on my shoulder. "I can see how hard you're trying," he would say, giving me a tender kiss on the forehead. "You're a wonderful mother." He never used superlatives like best or perfect. He didn't sugarcoat things with false praise, but his soft words reminded me that he saw the effort, the perseverance, and that he believed I was enough. The baby gradually developed an adorable repertoire of facial expressions that ranged from comically angry to sweetly amused. When she grew frustrated, she'd scrunch up her face and blow tiny bubbles, almost as if she were muttering baby curses at the world. When something delighted her, a funny face from her sister, the sound of a spoon clinking, the dog wagging its tail, she'd burst into one of those radiant smiles that crinkled her eyes and made her entire body wiggle in excitement. It dawned on me that she was indeed quite different from my older daughter, and that was okay. She didn't need to be the same. She was forging her own path, asserting her own place in our family. I began to see her spirited nature as something wonderful, an early sign that she might grow into a bold, fearless person who knows what she wants and isn't afraid to ask for it, or yell. The fierce independence that made those first few weeks so trying would someday serve her well, I told myself. And the more I embraced her fiery little personality, the more love I found blossoming within me. We started calling her our little rebel, half joking, because of her refusal to simply go along with the flow. My older daughter, our angel, remained as sweet and accommodating as ever, helping out with small tasks like handing me diapers or gently stroking the baby's hair when she fussed. Sometimes I'd watch the two of them together and feel a deep wave of gratitude that left me breathless. I could finally feel love coursing through me for both of my girls, in different ways but with the same fundamental intensity. The love I had once worried wouldn't exist had been there, just buried beneath exhaustion, depression, and a physical struggle the baby was dealing with due to her intolerance. One evening, after we had tucked my older daughter into bed, my husband and I sat together in the living room. He held the baby against his shoulder, patting her back gently. She was drifting off to sleep, her tiny fingers curled around a bit of his shirt. I looked at them, father and daughter, so at peace, and a tidal surge of emotion threatened to overwhelm me. I thought back to all the awful, guilt-ridden feelings I'd carried, all the resentment I'd spewed in my mind, and I realized just how far we'd come. I confessed to him, in a halting and tear-choked voice, that I had struggled to bond with our baby in the beginning, and that I had carried so much shame because of it. He listened without interruption, gently rubbing circles on the baby's back, his eyes never leaving mine. When I finished, he gave a somber nod and said, I had an idea it was hard for you. I didn't know how to ask without making you feel bad, but I'm so proud of you for pushing through. Hearing him say that was like having a massive burden lifted from my shoulder. We sat there, silent, soaking in the gravity of all those hidden truths that had finally been acknowledged. I realized that we had never been in danger of falling apart. Our relationship was indeed strong enough to handle the strain of postpartum depression, of difficult adjustments, of a baby who screamed more than smiled for a couple of months. We had found our footing together. I also found renewed determination to support other mothers who might find themselves in the same lonely boat. If I hadn't had therapy, if I hadn't sought medical help for possible PPD, I might still be stuck in that dark place, resenting my child and berating myself. If the pediatrician hadn't taken my concern seriously, my daughter might still be miserable from an undiagnosed intolerance. There are countless mothers out there who don't have supportive partners, or who have no access to quality health care, or who are too ashamed to even admit they're not bonding. My heart aches, and I want them to know that it doesn't make them monsters. It makes them human, grappling with hormonal storms, physical exhaustion, and societal pressures that paint motherhood as an instant fairy tale love story, when sometimes it takes more time and more help than we expect. The weeks rolled on. Each milestone the baby hit, I celebrated with fresh joy. The first time she rolled from tummy to back, I was right there, cheering as though she'd just won a gold medal. The first time she cooed in recognition when her big sister walked into the room, I nearly cried watching them forge that magical sibling bond. My older daughter, for her part, was thrilled to see her sister becoming more responsive and playful. She would lie on her stomach beside the baby during tummy time, offering gentle encouragement in the form of silly faces and giggles. Watching them discover each other was like witnessing a tiny miracle unfold. Right there in our living room, my own healing was ongoing. Therapy sessions became a sanctuary for honest reflection and emotional growth. I learned how to take moments for self-care, even if it was just a short walk around the block or a few minutes locked in the bathroom with some calming music playing from my phone. I learned to lean on my husband more openly. No more heroic attempts to shoulder it all by myself. I also realized that while my older daughter might always hold the memory of being my first, it didn't diminish the love I could carry for my second child. Love isn't a finite resource. It expands, evolves, and transforms to meet the needs of each new person we let into our hearts. Eventually, I also found a couple of mom groups in town, though it took a while to gather the courage to actually attend any meetups. The first time I went, I was petrified. I kept picturing a circle of mothers who judged me for having once felt so disconnected from my own infant. But to my surprise, as I got to know them, I learned that many of them had their own complicated postpartum stories. Some had felt an immediate bond with their babies, while others took months to feel attached. One mom confided that she had once called her mother in tears, unable to stop thinking that she had ruined her toddler's life by bringing home a new baby. Another shared her struggles with postpartum OCD and the intrusive thoughts that nearly drove her to a breakdown. In their stories, I found echoes of my own fears and relief in knowing I wasn't alone. At home, life found its rhythms. We handled the usual chaos: diapers, feedings, laundry piles, stepping on squeaky toys in the middle of the night, balanced with pockets of laughter and quiet love that made it all worthwhile. My older daughter started preschool, coming home each day with paintings and stories about her new friends. The baby grew chunk, rolling around and eventually sitting up, always with that determined glint in her eye. My husband and I carved out small date nights at home after bedtime, watching a show side by side, sometimes with the baby dozing in a rocker if she just wouldn't settle in her crib. We learned to be flexible, to let go of the illusions of perfect scheduling and embrace the unpredictability. The final piece of the puzzle clicked into place one evening when I was alone with the baby. My husband had taken our older daughter out for a quick grocery run, just a chance for her to get some fresh air. I was in the nursery, rocking our younger daughter gently as she stared up at me, wide awake but calm. I could see her reflection in the half-darkened window, and I noticed how her eyes, so much like mine in color, were fixed on me with an expression of trust and contentment. I rested my cheek on the top of her soft head. That feeling of all-consuming love burst through me, warm and uncontainable, the way I had always hoped it would. It was there, fully bloomed, binding me to her with something more powerful than words could describe. I pressed a gentle kiss to her forehead and whispered, "I'm so sorry it took me a while to find you in my heart, but I'm here now. I love you, baby girl." My voice broke as I said it, tears slipping down my cheeks, but I didn't shy away from her. She blinked, almost as if she understood, then closed her eyes and drifted off to sleep. In that moment, I forgave myself for the weeks of detachment, for the resentment, for the frustration. For every harsh thought I had during those a flood of relief coursed through me, as though I was finally allowed to exhale. The quiet peace of that nursery, the moonlight creeping in from the window and the steady rhythm of her breathing became a memory I would cherish forever. From then on, every day felt like a chance to celebrate how far we'd come. My daughter continued to grow, her personality shining through in boisterous laughter, stubborn fussiness, and unwavering curiosity about everything from ceiling fans to the family dog. She had strong preferences for certain toys, certain lullabies, and she'd let us know loudly when her needs weren't met quickly enough. Far from being irritated, I found myself smiling at her spirited nature. By the time she reached 3 months, our family dynamic looked and felt completely different from those dark early weeks. I could hold both my girls in my lap, one on each knee, and read them a story, marveling at how unbelievably lucky I was. Our angel and our rebel completed each other in a way I never anticipated. My husband would often snap photos of me making ridiculous faces to coax giggles from the baby, or of my older daughter singing to her sister. Each photo was a testament to resilience, love, and the complicated beauty of motherhood. Months passed, and I felt ready to post an update on the anonymous forum where I had first confessed my struggle. I wanted to give hope to mothers in a similar position, to let them know that sometimes it takes more time, help, and patience than society leads us to believe. The comments that poured in were supportive, from other mothers who had felt the same guilt and shame but eventually found the connection they so desperately desired. I read story after story of how love can take root in unexpected ways, how mental health support is crucial, how not every perfect mother is as perfect as she might seem on social media. It was a chorus of honesty that provided even more healing for me. And so our story continued. There were still days of chaos, tears, and frustration. That's parenthood. But it was balanced with genuine affection, laughter, and a shared commitment to growth. On my hardest days, I'd remind myself of that first real smile she gave me and how it had chipped away at my fear. I'd recall the hours of therapy, the daily journaling of small victories, and the unwavering support of a husband who was my rock. I also drew strength from the memory of my older daughter's unconditional love toward her baby sister. Her wide-eyed wonder and gentle kisses had paved a path for me to follow when I felt lost. Now, when people see us out and about, I see a complete family. They see the proud father, the mother smiling at her 2 daughters, one skipping along with boundless energy, the other nestled in her stroller with a curious, fiery sparkle in her eyes. They don't see the invisible journey it took to get here, the tears cried behind closed doors, the guilt, the therapy sessions, the doctor's visits. But that's all right. It's enough that we know. It's enough that I can hold this baby, my second daughter, and feel that overwhelming surge of love that once eluded me. I've learned that motherhood isn't always a seamless fairy tale. Sometimes it's messy and heartbreaking before it becomes transcendent. Sometimes you have to allow yourself the grace to admit that bonding can be hard and that help is necessary. I've learned to acknowledge my own humanity, to let go of the idea that I have to be perfect. My children don't need perfection. They need a mom who's willing to learn, grow, and love them fiercely, even if that fierceness took a little while to arrive in full force. In the end, I found that my heart did have room for this fiery little girl. More than enough room, in fact. Each day she grows, that love deepens, expanding in ways I never anticipated. And perhaps because of our rough start, I cherish every milestone, every soft snuggle, every delighted giggle all the more. She is mine, and I am hers, and I wouldn't change a single part of her personality, crying, fussing, and all, because it's precisely those traits that make her unique. My older daughter remains my angel, a sweet, gentle soul who has stepped beautifully into her role as a big sister. My baby is indeed a fired-up rebel, bursting with energy and determination. I love them both beyond measure, differently, yes, but equally, they are each their own person, and I marvel at them daily. From here on, I carry the memory of that rocky road as proof that even in the darkest, most guilt-ridden moments of motherhood, hope and healing are possible. This chapter of my life has taught me lessons about self-forgiveness, perseverance, and the complexity of maternal love. I'm grateful for my husband's steadfast presence, my therapist's guidance, and the glimmers of understanding I found in friends and online community. Most of all, I'm grateful for the second chance I feel I've been given with my new baby, to show her that she is cherished every bit as much as her sister. Because now, as I cradle her in my arms and watch her eyes flutter closed, I feel that indescribable warmth that I once thought I'd never have with her, and that is worth the sleepless nights, the self-doubt, the tears, because now I look at my life and realize how utterly complete our family is. I look forward to every new day with her, with both my daughters, with my patient, loving husband. The journey ahead will be filled with fresh challenges, teething, first steps, sibling squabbles, all the trials of growing children. But I face them with a heart open wide, confident that love, at last, has firmly rooted itself where it belongs. And in those quiet, tender moments where I watch her sleep, I feel a calm sense of certainty. We've overcome so much, and we've done it together. That is the real beauty of this story. And though it may not have been obvious at the start, that beauty was waiting for me all along, just beneath the surface, until I was ready to receive it.